This week I'll be looking at an album that dances with blues, flirts with funk, and rocks seriously hard. Returning after their whiskey-soaked psychedelic trip that was Psychic Warfare, Clutch are finally back to frazzle our brains once more with Book of Bad Decisions. With Book of Bad Decisions being their 12th offering, you'd imagine that potentially this band might show signs of slowing down. However, Book of Bad Decisions, thankfully, dispels any worries that you might have. With the band's brand new album, they wanted to try and get a sound that was as close to their live sound as possible, and enlisting the help of producer Vance Powell, whose repertoire includes Seasick Steve among many, they did as much as they could to really encompass this sound of what Clutch is live. The band even had Powell come out with them for a couple of days on tour to listen to different areas in the venue to really understand their sound. And I can tell you for a fact that the overall tones on Sonic Counselor on drums are absolutely sensational. You know, it really does sound like you're hearing the band live, and later on in the album, HB is in Control, which stands for Hieronymus Bosch, sounds like you've literally walked into their practice studio. You know, from the moment that Gimme the Keys comes on, you're in Clutch territory, and that's it. Of course, the band have always had ties with blues, and Book of Bad Decisions carries on this trend. For example, Spirit of 76 has that hazy kind of blues feel to it. Neil Fallon's vocals follow Tim Salt's lead guitar lines perfectly and really kind of reinforce that idea of melody. The band actually recorded with amps that were from the 1950s to make sure they got that vintage sound. It's precisely those small elements and those ideas that bring the feel of Clutch as a band alive. For example, a small guitar lick on Emily Dickinson that brings the band back into the verse. These are all small characteristics which make up the bigger picture of what is Book of Bad Decisions. Not to mention A Good Fire, which features bass tones which sound identical to Black Sabbath, no doubt in part to the fact that Dan Maines used a 1974 Ampeg to make sure that he sounded like those Black Sabbath classics. But there's also some kick-ass solos to boot as well. For example, the psychedelic madness of How to Shake Hands. And the album's title track, Book of Bad Decisions, that has this beautiful blues outro solo. But of course, with the Clutch album, there are riffs lurking just around the corner that really kick things into gear. A prime example being Weird Times, which overall has more of a classic rock feel to it. Though the rumbling riff of Ghoul Wrangler certainly takes pole position as some of the best material on the album, for sure. But what I've always loved about Clutch, and I think that no one else can ever come close to, is this element of kind of swag that the band have got. You know, it could be the organ on Emily Dickinson, or the slight piano on Vision Quest, and even that cowbell on Weird Times. You know, it brings that sort of like southern swagger to it, but they've really excelled on In Walks Barbarella. This is where Clutch proved to longtime fans they still are open to experimentation, and there are some fantastic moments on this track. You know, it almost sounds like it was from Quentin Tarantino's soundtrack, Cutting Floor. There's the beautiful horn sections, and it just makes you want to boogie. It's as close to Parliament Funkadelic as you're gonna get, you know, without Eddie Hazel. Nevertheless, one of the most iconic frontmen doesn't fail to impress once more. What I've always thought is Clutch's secret weapon is his diction, it's his delivery. For example, in Walks Barbarella, there's that bit where he's just like, or even on Emily Dickinson, there is this booming sense to him, and he's got such a big presence with his voice that it really elevates those kind of quite airy, sleepy guitar blues lines and really makes a song into something else completely. Yes, indeed. Like this. And it's so cool. That's what it is, it's cool. You know, the track is about making crab cakes, and how can you make crab cakes like an amazing song? But it's precisely this kind of real life detailing that makes Clutch clutch. A Good Fire tells the story of when Fallon first heard Black Sabbath, for example. Or Sonic Counselor is about Clutch's fans, which are called the Gearheads. But then you've also got kind of a more serious side on How to Shake Hands, which is a lot more politically involved. In terms of negatives, the only thing I would say is there's quite a lot of songs. There's about 15 songs. And, you know, you want to make sure that everyone stands out. And like Lorelei, for example, has this really fantastic gloom to it, and because there's so many songs, it can be a little bit difficult to kind of crack, but once you've cracked it, there's certainly no going back. Clutch's artwork is always a pretty weird one, but I feel that it kind of represents that sort of Americana sense that the band have always embodied, so I guess it kind of works. Book of Bad Decisions is Clutch potentially sounding their most Clutch ever. Tracks range from being tongue-in-cheek, serious, experimental, but on the whole, the most important thing is that they embody the soul of Clutch. And not to mention, courtesy of Vance Powell, they're somewhat the best I've ever heard them on record. He's almost opened the door to the rehearsal room, and when you put this record on, you just step right in. Either way, Book of Bad Decisions is a fantastic introduction to the wacky, weird, and wonderful world of Clutch. So for that reason, I'm going to give the record a 4 out of 5 skulls. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure to check out my Apocalyptic Anniversary series over on Metal Sucks. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this video. Drop a comment and I'll see you guys next week for another review.